First up in this series of how leftism is a religion, my first example is going to be on faith, as it's the common denominator and backbone of all religions. And I'm also going to quote various atheists. Most of them were former believers turned atheist, and they've all switched over to the left politically. And I'll be using their definitions for this video. Let's start with Aaron Ra's definition of faith. He's a bit rapid fire, so if you need to go back through again and catch everything, you might have to.
To my experience, many Christians will admit that faith is a belief that is not based on evidence. When I debated Kent Hovind, he admitted that over and over again. Every time he said that anything you believe is a matter of faith if you can't prove it. And Frank Turek admitted this too in the title of his book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, implying that you either base your belief on faith in lieu of evidence, or you base it on evidence which neither requires nor desires faith. William Lane Craig's notion of reasonable faith is an oxymoron. Reason and faith are in stark contrast, although believers and unbelievers do use the same words with very different meanings. Those who prefer reason over faith define belief as what we think is apparently true, but that we don't know to be true because we can't sufficiently prove it. If you can't show it, you don't know it, and you shouldn't say that you do. Those who prefer faith over reason seem to treat belief as an act of will, of mind over matter, through the power of positive thought, consciously convincing themselves, or literally make believe. And then they profess their dogmatic conviction as if it were certain knowledge, which it's not. I was taught that forcing yourself to believe unbelievable passages from the Bible was called eating the word. Over the course of my life, I've heard many admissions that these may be what the facts are, but I prefer to believe this. Or why would I want to believe what you believe? Why can't I believe what I want to believe? Why does it have to be true before I believe it? And my favorite was when a believer said that I shouldn't correct his mistaken beliefs because he has the right to be wrong. That's why Jesus and Krishna are both personal gods, the voices in your head that you have conversations with, who understand and agree with everything you say and who know everything you know, but can never reveal any knowledge you couldn't already know. I should say, reveal any accurate knowledge anyway. I would say that that's like having an imaginary friend, but it's not like that. It is that. That is exactly what it means to have a personal relationship with whatever God it is. It is literally your imaginary friend. It's all just imagined.
Faith is what you use to believe in dogmatic beliefs that are unsupported by evidence. This is why all religions are faith-based. It takes faith to believe that Muhammad rode a half-horse, half-man creature up to the moon before he split it in half. It takes faith to believe in the 5 million gods of Hinduism. And it takes faith to believe that Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind, while a parade of supernatural chariots and fire rode in front of him. Many religious debates have been had on this issue, but just to be clear, claims are not evidence. If the Bible makes a claim, the fact that it's in the Bible doesn't give that claim any more truthfulness. Let's use transgenderism on the other side. The fact that a man can claim he is a woman is not evidence that he's a woman. Claims are not evidence. It's not evidence when Muslims use it, and it's not evidence when trans people use it. Faith, or the desire to believe in something despite any evidence for, or all the evidence against, can warp your version of reality so much that you can literally believe that men are women and women are men, on nothing more than just their say-so. Well, what crazy thing could you not believe when just casually accepting unverified claims? As far as I'm aware, there's no scientific way of determining who's trans or who's not, other than their subjective experience and their own testimonies, which is an anecdotal fallacy.
And in both cases, whether it's true or not true, and whether we have a reason to believe it or not, the confidence level of our belief, the fact that we trust it, is completely irrelevant to any of this. It's merely an assertion. It's merely an expression that I believe this because I believe this. Getting people to recognize that that's what they're doing is one of the ways that you can address this. Now, when they say that they have this belief and it's based on faith, the natural reaction for many non-theists is just to point out, well, that's blind faith, that's gullibility. And the theists will often react, no, it's not, my faith is not blind, my faith is based on evidence. Well, let's think about that for a minute. If you believe something based on faith, and the faith is based on evidence, then what you're really saying is that your belief is based on evidence. The entire faith portion of that argument, that middle term, can be removed and it changes nothing. Because when you say that your belief is based on faith and your faith is based on evidence, all you're really saying is my belief is based on evidence and I am confident in the evidence. I am convinced that it's reliable and I am convinced that it is sufficient to warrant belief, which goes without saying. Because if you say that you believe something because of the evidence, you've already implied that you're confident in the reliability of the evidence and that this evidence is sufficient to warrant belief. And in that context, the word faith becomes completely useless. So let's just leave it out. And after we've addressed the evidence that your belief is based on, if you then say, well, you just have to have faith, what are you talking about now? Are you just saying you're going to continue to believe? In that point, aren't you just talking about faith as gullibility? Or are you talking about the second portion of the Hebrews verse, where faith is the evidence of things not seen? Faith is evidence? How does that work? Well, it turns out it doesn't work. If faith is actually synonymous with evidence, then just provide the evidence. There's no justification for calling it faith. All it does is add confusion to the conversation. If you want to say that I believe because of faith and faith is in fact the evidence, present the evidence. Oh, no. I don't mean that faith is synonymous with physical evidence or sound argument. I mean that my faith alone is the evidence. My trust or confidence is the only evidence that I need. When that happens, the person you're talking to has willingly abandoned reason.
This is what the leftist is doing, insisting that their belief is backed by evidence when it's clearly not. If you're not believing on evidence, then what are you believing on? Faith, right? That's the logic here. Now that we have this concept of faith defined, or more accurately, blind faith, when you start using this lens to analyze what the left believes, you immediately run into problems. And this gets to something that is an insidious aspect of leftism. It's portrayed as non-religious, so they don't use terms like faith. But yet on many issues, they are using something like faith to support their arguments. Let's keep going with transgenderism as an example. The leftist dogma on this is that trans women are women. They just are. To get into the weeds about why they are is disrespectful to the people involved. And they'll even go as far to say that it's that kind of transphobic talk that gets trans people killed. We're just supposed to take trans people at their word that what they're describing about themselves is valid and true. Let's turn to an episode of the Atheist Experience. And that show got a question from someone asking, how do we know that transgenderism isn't just mental illness, given all the suicide, self-harm, depression, and anxiety that trans people have? The host, Tracy, handled the caller like this.
Let me just explain real quickly, all right? When I saw the call, I thought, well, let me just see if I can find something to help you out here in explaining this in a certain way. And so I had to look this up because I'm going to be honest with you. I am probably not the person to speak authoritatively about transgender issues. I would highly recommend that anybody that wants information on transgender topics go straight to the community and look into people that, like Callie Wright, who puts out the Gaytheist Manifesto, who can deal far more informatively about this issue. So I'm going to apologize right off the bat to the entire audience to say that I understand I am not the person to answer this question in an authoritative way.
So I did go and see what Callie Wright had to say. And wouldn't you know it, Callie Wright's information that he provides, and apparently a much better way than Tracy could, was this. I feel like a woman, even though I'm a man. Ergo, I am a woman. His personal testimony and belief that he's a woman is the proof of his condition. His claim is the evidence. It's literally as simple as that equation. I believe I'm a woman, therefore I'm a woman. There's no science, there's no test strip you pee on, there's no genetics to scan, there's no talk of chromosomes, there's no talk of gametes. It really is that simple for them. You can see it clear as day, the anecdotal fallacy, which again is all the left has when it comes to transgenderism. But they'll reject this when it comes to transracialism. Rachel Dolezal identifies as black, and yet clearly she's not black. Well, what evidence does she have that she's actually black? Nothing but her own words. Nothing but her imagination that she's black. Nothing but a perm and dark makeup. But that isn't enough for leftists. It's the exact same argument, but they can't see it and won't accept it. What makes Callie Wright a trans woman? He puts on heels and a dress and claims he's a woman. And now he's a woman. That is somehow totally different. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Except if you're trans, and then suddenly no evidence is required or wanted, exactly like how faith works when your belief is cornered. So if just believing in something doesn't count as evidence, and we can't rationally de facto accept a person's claim or testimony or experience without evidence, then what does count as reasonable evidence? Well, clearly, personal testimony is out. Appeals to authority are out. Appeals to popularity are out. Just because a man says they are a woman, and the media and government repeat that mantra, and there's a community of like-minded people who are all making the same claims, and these are all logical fallacies, then it seems we're in the right to not believe them. It seems like to wholeheartedly accept these people as what they claim to be, you have to put aside reason and accept it on very little or poor evidence. Or you could do what Tracy did and appeal to an authority who is actually just another person making the same claim and basing their belief on yet another logical fallacy. Faith is what's used to believe in the existence of the supernatural when faced with a lack of evidence for it. And by definition, supernatural things are beyond being investigated by our natural world and our methods of investigations. The left uses that same epistemology when insisting that trans women are women. If they had any proof that actually made sense, they'd bring that up immediately, rather than defer to someone's personal experience of being trans. It's all imaginary. It's madness. And 5 seconds ago, it was defined as mental illness until the DSM crumbled under activist pressure to change the definition to something sanguine. And somehow the fact that there's a community of these insane people grants it some validity.
It's all just imagined.
But like we pointed out, that is a logical fallacy. Let's quote Sam Harris here.
Now, I'm obviously not saying that Dr. Craig or all religious people are psychopaths and psychotics, but this to me is the true horror of religion. Okay, it allows perfectly decent and sane people to believe by the billions what only lunatics could believe on their own. Okay, if you wake up tomorrow morning thinking that saying a few Latin words over your pancakes is going to turn them into the body of Elvis Presley, okay, you have lost your mind. Okay. But if you think more or less the same thing about a cracker and the body of Jesus, you're just a Catholic.
Exactly. Leftism uses religious techniques to compel people who would have never believed that trans people are legitimate even 5 years ago to now be willing to die on every hill where that idea is challenged. They push their insane religious beliefs about gender on their own children. They dress in their religious garb and try to influence other people's children in a mock Sunday school-esque drag queen story hour, and they purposefully blur the reference lines of gender at every point. This is why so many of the leftist activities and pet projects are described as demonic, because it does have that air of religious insanity about it. So while they don't have the word faith in their vocabulary, they do use it in practice, and it guides all their beliefs. Douglas Murray has pointed out that all leftist beliefs crumble when under pressure because there really is no backbone for the stuff they believe in, other than it feels good to support it and it feels yucky to oppose it. Why do we have an obligation to Haiti to take in every single person that comes over? Are we just supposed to let anyone in the world come here if they have a bad experience in their own country? What makes a person a refugee? Why do Afghan refugees who have nothing in common with our culture have to travel the globe to seek refuge here? These are all assumptions made on faith who believe in these ideas for bad reasons. And while they may not have faith in their vocabulary yet, they definitely have come up with words for heretics. And we'll get into that in a future episode. But I think that's going to wrap up this episode on faith. As we'll see in the episode on dogma, religion makes claims about reality that in almost every case are believed on faith in lieu of evidence, and the believer must constantly reject all evidence to the contrary. It quickly becomes a convoluted game of mental gymnastics where you have to start denying even reality itself to maintain the belief, which every church, synagogue, temple, and mosque refuses to play that game. This is why there's no Q&A session after a Pentecostal tent revival. The sermon ends, the church organ starts playing the emotional music, and then they pass the offering around, and that's the end of it.
And they come right out of preaching. That's how they get you to give. They come right out of preaching and go right into that. God is good. God is great. Reach in your pockets to give me all your money, please.
The dogma and emotional manipulation present in both religion and leftism is put out there, and you either accept it or you classify it as the other, the world, the outsider, the sinner, the heretic, the bigot, the racist, the homophobe. It's about believing what you want to believe, and it's things like the devil, the evil side of the world, the Republicans, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, who are trying to convince you otherwise or put doubt in your mind. It never occurs to the trans activists that there might be real reasons to doubt what they say is true, or that any disagreement with them could ever be in good faith. As we float in this twilight zone of a world we're in, just remember that the left has no good reason to believe in what they believe. And most believers are simply useful idiots, parroting the same bumper sticker talking points and just going along with the agenda that the powers that be have put on us. Also remember that there's nothing new under the sun. And there was religion 5 seconds ago, and there's religion now. It might mutate a bit, it might have different forms, but the human need to believe in a huge, ridiculous, overarching theory of how people in the world are will always be there, and it hasn't gone away. And if religion starts dwindling, like the numbers of people who go to church are dwindling, it's not that they have somehow become enlightened. They've just taken that stupid way of thinking and applied it to politics or whatever is trendy right now. Anyways, that's all the time I have for today. If you like this video and type of content, consider giving this video a like and maybe subscribing. I have 3 more videos in this series, so I'll see you in the next video. Peace.